Hello, ho, ho, folks. I'm Santanon, and this is the only news that matters. You know, throughout the history of my videos, from time to time, I mention MK Ultra. Some of you already know what MK Ultra is. Some of you don't. So I figured I'd give you a quick rundown. One of the most bizarre and disturbing conspiracies of all time was Project MK Ultra. This was the secret name for a series of CIA experiments that took place from the 1950s to the 1970s, which were designed to explore the possibilities of mind control through the use of drugs such as LSD and mescaline. In these experiments, subjects were given mind-altering drugs, often without prior knowledge that that's what was going to happen to them. Their subsequent behavior was then studied. In several cases, the experiments resulted in death of one or another of the participants, and there were many instances of severe, permanently damaging mental illnesses. However, the CIA continued to conduct the trials until the project was finally exposed. Ultimately, very little useful information about mind control resulted from MK Ultra, and it seems that sadism, rather than serious scientific inquiry, was the driving force behind most of the experiments. MK Ultra was set up by Alan Dulles, and if you remember from my JFK video, Alan Dulles was the head of the CIA. You know, the one that JFK fucking fired because Alan Dulles is a piece of shit. Well, that's the guy who set up MK Ultra in 1953. He wanted to look into the use of mind control techniques. The project was led by a Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, and early research was directed towards trying to find a truth drug for the use in interrogation of Russian spies. The project was wide-reaching, with over 100 research programs, many of which were secret, and experiments were conducted on Army and other personnel without their knowledge. In the initial phase of the project, the effect of radiation on the human mind was the main focus of research. But as time went on, interest began to center on the effect of psychotropic drugs, particularly LSD. As the programs proliferated, subjects began to be recruited from outside the Army and the CIA. Patients with mental illnesses, many of them with minor disorders such as mild depression or anxiety, as well as prostitutes and other types of individuals that the government deemed as undesirables, were often used as guinea pigs. An undeniable element of torture crept into the experiments, as Gottlieb began to tie his victims up in straitjackets after administering drugs. They were often locked in rooms where they couldn't see or hear anything, or loops of tape recordings were played at them in an attempt to drive them insane. Gottlieb also ordered his subjects to be given enormous amounts of LSD. In one experiment, volunteers were given the drug for a period of over 2 months, causing many of them to suffer permanent mental damage. As time went on, the MK Ultra research programs became even more bizarre and unpleasant, but they yielded very little in the way of scientific results. One of the most infamous of these experiments was Operation Midnight Climax, in which Dr. George Hunter White recruited prostitutes from San Francisco. The prostitutes were asked to administer LSD to their clients without the client's knowledge. The LSD was put into the victims' drinks, and CIA operatives monitored their behavior through two-way mirrors. No scientific benefits at all occurred from this experiment. The operatives were not trained scientists, and one can only assume that it was set up as a means of satisfying the ridiculous interest of those who devised it. However, it took more than a decade for this program to end. It was later revealed that Dr. Gottlieb's behavior as head of MK Ultra was also questionable. He was known to take large amounts of LSD himself, and he seemed obsessed with the drug, even though it began to emerge that it was of very little use as a mind-controlled device. Subjects under the influence of the drug behaved erratically, and, if anything, became less susceptible to interrogation than they had been without the drug. Undeterred by the fact that LSD seemed to be useless as a mind-controlling substance, the MK Ultra team went on to perform more and more dangerous experiments on their hapless victims. In some cases, they simultaneously drip-fed a mixture of amphetamines and barbiturates into their subjects, which resulted in extreme mental confusion and sometimes even death. In addition to the use of LSD, amphetamines, and barbiturates, the MK Ultra team experimented with other drugs such as heroin, mescaline, marijuana, alcohol, etc. Perhaps the worst abuses of all took place in Canada under Dr. Ewan Cameron. Dr. Cameron had put forward the theory of psychic driving, in which he claimed that the mind could be erased and then corrected through drugs and other therapies. He conducted experiments in Montreal over a period of almost a decade, using a combination of electroconvulsive therapy and drugs, both administered at well above the normal levels. He regularly induced comas in his subjects, sometimes for months on end, while playing them looped recordings, supposedly to correct their thinking. Not surprisingly, by the end of his treatment, many of his patients were mentally scarred for life. It wasn't until 1974 that the project came under press scrutiny, when an article in the New York Times reported on the CIA's history of experiments on human beings for the purpose of mind control research. Several committees were set up to look into what had happened, but they found that much of the evidence had gone missing. Many of MK Ultra's records had been destroyed in order to prevent the truth from ever coming out. Even so, there was enough information to show that the MK Ultra project had been very extensive. Over 30 universities and other institutions had been involved, and many of the subjects had been completely unawares that they were being given any drugs. Not only this, the experiments were mostly completely pointless from a scientific point of view. It was also revealed that an army scientist, Frank Olson, had been given LSD without his knowledge as part of an experiment, and had later thrown himself out a window and died. His family later alleged that he was murdered because he knew too much about the CIA's nefarious activities. There was also reports that a professional tennis player, Harold Blower, had died as a result of being given high doses of mescaline without his consent. Following these revelations, the United States Army was also investigated, and a number of shocking cases came to light. They involved subjects who had been given drugs without their consent or knowledge as a part of a so-called experiments. Legislation was enacted to prevent such abuses occurring again, and compensation was paid to some of the victims. Nevertheless, MK Ultra project remains one of the most sinister and bizarre state conspiracies ever to have taken place in America, or perhaps anywhere else. And you see, a lot of people believe that MK Ultra still goes on till this day, just under a new name. There's a Canadian journalist, and I'll link to some of her stuff, that says she has proof that MK Ultra is still active until this day. So that was a quick overview of Project MK Ultra. So for any of you who had been watching my videos and didn't know what MK Ultra was when I referenced it, now you do. Thanks for tuning in. God bless, and hail Santa. The Only News That Matters is a production of the Children's Television Workshop. Promotional consideration provided by viewers like you. Thank you. Gotta lib. Gotta lib. Gotta lib.